Today I thought I'd show you how to sand resin, but that would be the most boring video ever, so while I'm sanding, I'll share some of my experiences trying to sell my crafts over the years. I made these two coasters as part of a resin test, and one of them looks okay, but the other one had a lot of bubbles on the surface, so it doesn't look very nice. I typically top coat my coasters and don't do anything to them to prep for that, except dust them and wipe them with alcohol if they've been sitting for a while. But I got this sander for Christmas and I was looking to test it out, so I decided to sand the surface of the janky coaster and record it so we can learn together. I've never been a fan of sanding anything, avoiding it at all costs. With this attitude, it's unlikely I'll ever become a woodworker unless I can find the zen in sanding. This test did not help with that. I've been able to find the zen in resin, learning that pouring and stirring is very important, and found a way to become comfortable with them and even enjoy them sometimes. But sanding resin might suck even more than sanding wood, so I don't see that for me in the future. The sander is from Let's Resin, and I think it was purchased for around $80. It comes with a handheld unit that can be set in a stand if you want to use it that way. It has a couple of different heads on it, and it came with a bunch of sandpaper grits in different sizes. I'd had some resin sanding experience, but it was by hand, so I was excited to see if this improved it. I suspected that when I sanded out the bubble marks, I would be left with tiny pits that would fill with dust, which was exactly what happened. I kept making my way through the different grits, hoping that I would finally get rid of the pits, but I didn't. The pits are going to cause problems because even though I'll wipe it with alcohol, there are still tiny pits filled with dust that I can never get clean, and I suspect that will cause more bubbles. This already seems like a mistake. So in the meantime, at least once a day, I see someone on a resin Facebook group ask how much they can sell their pieces for. So I want to give you a few things to think about if you're asking the same question. I've been crafting for a really long time and have had some success selling my wares, but I never start a hobby from a place of wondering what I can sell something for. That's just not why I make things. Then it turns it into a job, and that's not what I'm after. I just want to make things and have fun. Selling stuff you make is hard. Let me just say that up front. I've sold lots of different crafts over the years, and many sell really well and others don't. Manage your expectations and understand that you may not sell enough to make it worth the investment. And not just for the resin itself, because of the time it takes to get it right. There's about a 50% failure rate, and that gets expensive and frustrating. Just like anything else, you've got to find your buyer. And you'd think in the age of the internet that would be easy, but I'm here to tell you it's hard. First, resin is difficult to photograph, ridiculously so. I have been unable to successfully take photos of my pieces because it just doesn't catch the light the same way as it does in person. Video is a little better, but you have to pay more for video ads on Etsy, and the odds of you selling something made of resin on that platform is probably pretty low. Etsy in and of itself can be a job to maintain, so don't assume you'll do well at it. Take a hard look at other listings on Etsy and see if your work is better or worse than theirs, and then see how much they've sold. Not to mention, you've got to have great photography or AI skills. If your goal is to sell at a craft show, you might do better than online, but this is even more work than trying to sell on Etsy. You'll have a limited amount of space. Every sale I've been to gives you a 10-foot table and a chair, so you need to choose carefully what you want to put on your table and how it's displayed. You also have to haul your stuff and the displays whenever you do a sale. When I'm at a sale, I walk around to see what others are selling, and this might sound snobby, but when I see a resin table, I'm usually not impressed. It's often cluttered with small items, and it's unclear what they're for or if they're just decorative. People prefer to walk up to a table that looks put together and is easy to navigate. Small decorative items like frogs and dragons are cute, and some people might buy them, but it's unlikely they're going to pay a lot unless there's something really spectacular about them. For the last few years, I've been painting mandala stones, and they take me hours and hours to make. The cost to make them is very low, and they are truly stunning, but I priced them at $50 my first season and barely sold any. People stopped at my table and were amazed, but I had very few sales, and most were to people that I knew. What I realized at that first sale was that people wanted to learn about how to make them more than they wanted to buy them. So I decided to pivot and started offering kits for sale that came with a video tutorial. People stopped and talked to me because my stones were fun to look at, but I made more selling kits than I did stones. I've always been hesitant to sell things that are just pretty because I personally would rather buy something useful. People can justify spending money more easily than on something that's just decorative. Tip number one, know your buyer. Each craft sale is different, and the buyers that come will vary based on location and what's for sale. For instance, if I'm going to sign up for a craft fair in a bougie suburb of the Twin Cities, I'm probably going to get bougie people that are willing to pay more for a piece of art and aren't as concerned about spending money on something that's useful. But those people aren't going to buy little dragons and frogs unless their kid talks them into it. They may not even stop at a table where they don't know what you're selling or why it's special. Do some research to see who your clientele is at the sales you want to be part of. If you're doing a sale at a church in an exurb, you could do really well selling your dragons and frogs, but price them accordingly. A $5 trinket might be a treasure for that buyer, and others may think that's too high. Tip number two, get ready to explain what you're selling and how it was made. Most people don't understand what goes into creating something with resin, so you've got to tell them so they understand the work that went into it. They still might not pay for your $5 frog, but at least they'll have respect for how you made it. I limit my craft sales to the holiday season because that's when I sell the most. I don't like hauling stuff all over town because I don't make a lot of money doing it, and I'd rather be home making more stuff. Craft sale table fees can vary greatly. Some may be free, and some very overpriced because organizers know that sellers will pay more to be part of a really great sale. Go to all of these sales as a customer to see who the people are that are selling and also who's buying and if your products will fit in. You may not even be considered if your products aren't high quality or they have another seller with similar items. If your table is next to someone that does some spectacular artwork and you're selling trinkets, you may be disappointed, so plan accordingly. Each sale is different, and if your goal is to sell a few things and have great conversations with people, then you'll have managed your expectations appropriately. Tip number three, pricing. People often say that you should take your costs and triple it to find the price for your pieces, but I think that's a flawed logic. If I priced my stones at 3 times the cost to make, they'd be $3. Resin is no different. Yes, an epoxy river table was extremely expensive to make, but it also takes a lot of skill in woodworking and resin to get right, so that's not a fair argument either. I tried lowering my price to $40 for my next sale and still only sold a few. The kit sold much better because, again, it's useful. The recipient will learn something. I'm selling an experience. If I made something absolutely gorgeous and useful out of resin, I'm going to price it where I think someone will pay, and that might be different from sale to sale. I know when my work is exceptional and when it's just okay, and you need to know that too. I've made some really ugly crap out of resin, and it either goes in the garbage or if it's good enough to give to a friend, I'll find someone who would appreciate it. Ask those around you, what would you pay for something like this? And ask for honesty. Your mom is always going to tell you something is amazing, but if you've got a discerning friend who will give it to you straight, ask them the hard question. You may not like the answer, but at least they're not just blowing smoke. If you're putting everything you've made on your table in the hope that it sells, think again. If you're showing work that isn't great, all of your work looks poor. Your table reflects your brand, style, and art. Once I had a friend over and I had a stone that I didn't think was very good and I was going to throw it away. She said, "No, it's beautiful. Why wouldn't you try to sell that?" Well, because it makes the rest of my stuff look subpar and I can barely sell my most gorgeous stones. I gave the stone to her because she clearly liked it, but that was her taste, not mine. I'm not selling anything that I don't think is exceptional because I'm fussy and I don't want crap out there with my name on it. I mostly sell at sales that are just before the holidays. A lot of churches and schools will hold sales during that time, and sometimes they're free or they just want a donation. Customers show up for these sales to buy gifts for people, so plan accordingly. What can you make that's a great gift? That's the time of year where people might buy something that's just pretty for a gift, but they'd be really jazzed to buy something that is beautiful and useful. So if you can make things that fit in that category, you'll probably have the most success. I just started working with resin about 6 months ago, but I've gone through probably 20 gallons to get to the point where think I can sell my pieces at a sale. Last year I threw a basket of coasters on my table and sold them for $5, And they sold very well, but resin was still very new to me and they weren't perfect. By selling them cheap, I got rid of a lot of coasters, which left room for me to make more stuff, and that was my goal. I mean, how many coasters can I give my mom? Most sales these days, at least in my area of the US, require that you have a tax ID to participate. Don't be scared off by this. It's part of the deal and not difficult to get one. This is another hurdle to sell your work, so if you're serious about it and you think you're good enough to make back some of the money you've spent, go for it. My last piece of advice is to finish your products appropriately for how they are priced. If you've got a coaster you want to sell someone, but it's got a sharp edge or the back doesn't look very nice, take the time to top coat it and put a backing on it. Your work displays your brand. And speaking of finishing, I'm about ready to call it quits on this coaster because I don't feel like I'm getting very far and it's a big damn mess. I've gone through all the sandpaper grits and even tried some polishing compound I got from someone's resin stash. My assumption about the dust-filled pits was spot on. This has turned out much worse than if I had just top coated the thing. This is after polishing and the other coaster, which I'll show you how to top coat. It takes some patience, but once you get good at pouring, it's a snap. I can do it in about 15 minutes. The sanding, however, took 40 minutes and looks worse than it did when I started. I'll top coat this one too eventually. The key to top coating is patience. It takes a long time, so make yourself comfortable. I know I need about 12 mils for my coasters, and although I typically do several at a time, I usually limit myself to 5 at once. This is very slow work and you have to stop and let the resin spread out before adding more, otherwise you'll flood it. It's so time consuming, in fact, that it starts to get too thick, so I don't mix up more than 60 mils at once for this. I'm going to pour a small amount of resin in the middle of my coaster and use a stir stick to spread it across the surface. Don't put too much down at once because it's easy to let it roll off the edge if you're not paying attention. I have another video where that happened if you want to learn from my mistakes. I need to keep the resin on the horizontal surface only. If I get it on the side, it'll give the resin a path to follow that I don't want. The right angle on the edge allows for it to stay together in one place. I need to cover the entire surface with resin, all the way up to the edge, showing the resin where to go. My coaster has a lip around it from where the first cure shrunk back. I almost have a little dam to work within, but be careful. One slip of the stick and you've got a runner down the side. If there's dust or an oily fingerprint on the surface, the resin might shrink away from it, causing a fisheye or a flat spot that repels the resin. You might see fisheye if you don't have enough resin on the surface too. So I'll pour just a bit more and hit it with my heat gun, and then move it over to my parking spot. This isn't a great view, but I'm essentially dropping a little bit of resin at a time, giving it a minute to flow to the edge, and then adding a bit more. If I'm doing several coasters at once, I'll go back and forth between them, giving enough time for it to level out. That's why it's important to do this slowly. One side might look full, but the other has a fisheye. If you give it a minute, it could level out. So just be patient. Sit down and do this if you need to get more comfortable. This is Let's Resin 1-to-1, by the way. I like how it works for top coating and a lot of other things. If you're not sure which resin to buy to get started, this is a perfectly good resin that does most things well, but not everything. I have another video reviewing several types if you want to know what the differences are. You can't see the coaster very well, but I had a drip down the side I needed to clean up before it caused a problem. Hopefully I was able to get all of the residue off too. Once I think I've got it as full as it should be, I'm going to quit and cover it to cure for the night. And here's how they look once the top coat cured. The sanded coaster looks terrible, and the top coated one looks amazing. I should have skipped the sanding altogether. This was after 40 minutes, and I still have to top coat it anyway. I've managed to find zen in the pour, but still not in the sanding. See you next time.